Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Welcome to Real Recovery. Bill and George got Ryan on the board as usual. We've got kind of a homecoming week this week, George.
Totally. I'm really looking forward to this.
What did I mean by that?
Well, our first producer, the great Alex.
Yeah, he's here in studio.
Who was a young kid.
Way back when.
And now he's coming back as a married adult.
Two kids.
Yeah. Corporate job. Really done a good job. He's in the recovery field. We're real proud of him. He looks great and can't wait.
Yeah. Let's not talk about him in front of him.
He's blushing a little.
He's a little bit.
I don't want to upset him so like he knocks that big bottle of water over.
No,
couldn't have that happen.
We're not going to do that.
Okay.
We're going to keep calm. All right, George, let's talk about, first of all, welcome everyone to the show. If you are in a place where you need this program because you're struggling with an addiction, we're just so glad you've tuned in because we want you to hear through the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ that you can have a different life starting right now. Doesn't have to wait another 2 minutes. You can give your life to Christ and you can surrender your will to Him, and He will be the architect of your recovery.
You know, and I think, Bill, what people get that listen to our show a lot, I'll try to watch my S's there, I kind of whistled. We are two guys who are walking along with you. I'm in recovery for myself. Bill is a long-term Christian Bible study leader, speaker, evangelist. We're walking along with you, and when we have the guests on, it ministers to us as well. And don't think you're alone. Don't think you're not doing it good enough. If your life isn't getting the results, let Jesus work through you with the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. George, we want to deal with the step tonight, which is what we usually do. First part, we'd like to talk about one of the steps.
Why do we do that?
Well, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because step work, according to you, and what I've learned, is it's pretty important stuff. They're all really biblically based, whether you know it or not, and there's a strong spiritual connection to every one of these steps. And even if you're not in recovery from an addiction, if you're just a believer and you are interested in this step work, it's going to benefit you because we're all at one point, if we were lost and dead in our sins and now alive in Christ, well, we're in recovery.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. And one of the things, Bill, for me, I knew a lot about God. I was a Christian. I couldn't stop using booze and cocaine. But I never had a relationship with Him until I did the steps, because what it does is get your ego away, very ego deflating. And then at the end of the steps, and they're all connected, and we work them circularly, like if I look at my defects of character in steps 6 and 7, I have to go back to step 1 because I'm powerless over them and wind up going to step 3 where we make a decision to turn our will, our life over to the care of God as we understand Him. We understand Him to be Jesus Christ and say, hey, help me with this. I'm powerless with it. Help me to walk. And Jesus said in John 15:5, we talk about it all the time on the show, apart from me, you can do nothing. So what steps you want to talk about?
I want to talk about step 12, because Alex is going to really talk about all of the stories in his 12 years working at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, because he's been in the front row hearing these stories. And they are incredible stories, because we've had many, many guests on this show. And what the Lord has done in their lives is nothing short of supernatural. And then we want people to not only take their story, own their story, and be able to present their story in conversation or in front of groups, because those stories will help change lives. So step 12 says, having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
I love that. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and really what they do, it's like the old four spiritual laws of Bill Bright, I think, in Campus Crusade, Bill. Mm-hmm. You know, basically, if you died tonight, where are you going to spend eternity?
Great question.
Well, it's the question, isn't it? And for us, when we look at it, I can't do this, he can do it. I'm going to let him do it the first 3 steps. And then we look at our inventory. And we continue to take that in step 10, 11. We seek God through prayer and meditation, asking only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out, not my will for God. And we get to 12. We've had the spiritual awakening. We carry the message to other alcoholics, because what happens is God forgives you, cleans you off, helps you get sober, and has a job for you to carry the message of hope that's only found in Jesus Christ to other people that are suffering. If you're a recovering addict, you can talk to people other people can't, because you've walked the road. God let you go. You went your own way, and he drew you back. And now he says, hey, I got a job for you. And I think that's the best part of recovery, Bill, is working with others, because we can't see God, but we can sure see what he does, and takes dead people and makes them alive. So how do you do this? Well, you ask God what he wants you to do, and maybe your hardened heart will have more empathy, compassion in it, because you've been there. And this is the victory for you, but your story is really God's story in you. And you've got an opportunity now. I'm around people all the time that celebrate recovery birthdays, and they always say, I never thought it would be good. I knew I had to quit, but I've come alive again, and my life is so much joy and gratitude. I have to attest to that. I never wanted to do this. I just didn't want to go to prison, and Christ shut up and goes, okay, let me lead the way here. You follow. Mm-hmm. I'm not your co-pilot. And it gives us a program for living. I can work the 12 steps. I heard a great sermon on Galatians 5 last Sunday. But how do I do that? Well, God, I'm powerless over this. I'm unmanageable. I can't do it. Help me to do that. And the Holy Spirit will come with the gift of the Spirit, Bill. And I heard you give a great talk about 10 years ago at the Salvation Army. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Hey, I got to ask God for that. I didn't get that from the factory.
Good point. And then, George, I love in step 12, it says we try to carry this message to others. And I think, it's kind of an interesting use of words. I mean, we talk about evangelism, and we talk about doing apologetics and discipleship. There's something very folksy about carry this message to others. That's an easy way to start a conversation, in my opinion.
Well, it is. And part of that goes back to the 12-step tradition of we are based on attraction rather than promotion. We're the sober guys and women. Mm-hmm. And if you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, God will show up. And fortunately, most of the people that show up at recovery center doors and recovery accountability groups, they have the gift of willingness because they've been beaten into a state of desperation. When all else fails, I'll try God now, mm-hmm. which is really funny if you think about it in a sad way. But he knew you would do that all along. And really what it has to be is a death to self. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing is no longer working.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, Alex is our in-studio guest. We're going to probably go down memory lane a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. He was our very
Who's
first...
Alex?
He's our guest tonight.
Maybe that memory lane thing's not my strong
point.
Well,
no, it never has been.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we're going to tell stories, and we're going to hear about amazing transformations of what Christ has done in many people's lives. All right, we're going to take a little break and be right back. You're listening to Real Recovery. Bill and George, don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. It is home week, George. We've got an amazing guest tonight and today.
Yesterday.
Yeah. And
one of our favorite people, and he's an adult now.
Yeah, he's all grown up. This is how it all began. Real Recovery 14 years ago. Our very first producer, Alex, and he's here with us in studio.
Yeah. It's good to be back. It's a little surreal, but it's good to be back.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm so glad you did it. He left us to go somewhere else, a competing.
We can talk about this.
Can we
George.
talk?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad the Kleenex is out here because
No,
I have some emotion.
I sense you're getting emotional, which is troubling.
So when we started going back, we did our show Sunday night, which is
Live? Yes.
Yeah.
and we still do it live, but we tape it, right?
Whatever.
Live to
Yes.
And so we come in here, Bill and I do, and Alex is our producer, young kid. Were you about 20 then, 21?
No, I mean, I was in mid-20s maybe.
Okay.
22, 3, 4, right around there. Yeah.
A lot younger than we were.
Yeah.
And we did the show the first night, and Bill and I went out to eat because you, I believe, had a girlfriend at the time and didn't want to join us. And we went out, and
If my wife's listening, that's
No,
not true.
it
not
was
true.
his
He didn't-
wife,
That's
wasn't it?
not.
No, he didn't have a
No,
girlfriend
I didn't.
at the time.
Yeah, no, I was just very alone.
Yeah.
You
Anyway,
just didn't want to go out with us.
That was.
that I didn't say
you
that.
blame him?
Well, no,
George,
but I
do you
mean,
blame him?
no, but I mean, yeah, I kind of do. I thought
Okay.
we were cool
Boy,
guys, and
14 years later, you're still holding
I
resentment.
do.
You've got some work to do. Maybe we can talk about this on
You
the
should
show.
listen to this show.
Yeah, you got to work through the resentment.
Okay, let me know when you're done. So we went out to eat, and Bill and I thought it was a fraternity prank because we come into this beautiful studio.
No one's here.
Nobody's here, and it was kind of weird.
I know. And we went into the studio and we thought the microphones were on because the red lights were on above the microphones. And we thought, is this really
Is that
happening?
what that thing is?
Yeah.
It's on right now.
It's on right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
You don't know that after 14 years.
Never noticed it.
Okay.
Never noticed it. Too busy looking at you, waiting for you to come over here and
Trust
try
me. That's why
something.
we've got
Yeah.
chicken wire between us.
But you did it for what, 2-3 years with us?
At least.
Yeah, longer than that. Because
Okay, I got the girlfriend thing wrong and how long you were here. You
Yeah.
just blew
my
us
name's
off.
Alex.
Why don't we
first of
start
all.
over,
Yeah,
George?
that's-
Why don't we start over?
Okay.
Alex is here tonight. Here's our first producer. Let's move on from there.
My name's Alex.
Yeah.
I'm just introducing myself.
That's good.
You might as well. Hey, he's a radio
You know, I
pro.
forgot how difficult he was to work with, you know?
He was not difficult.
This
You were the difficult
I always
one.
have been. It's a maturity problem. Anyway, good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? So,
Professional
yeah,
interviewer question.
Yeah. Boy, so many. Yeah, only 14 years to cover. So, so after this, I went to work for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. And, you know, when I started this show, I didn't know anything about recovery, and it just so happened that something opened up in MNTC, and so I went there and learned a lot about recovery over the next 14 years. I've been there for 12 years of those 14, I think. So, so that's where I've been at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, working in the marketing department, and every day hearing stories of how people, come in and their lives are a mess, and then they leave and they aren't. So,
George, I'm guessing that the only person that's heard more recovery stories than us is Alex.
Oh, he's probably heard a lot more
A
than
lot
we
more
have.
than, yeah.
I've heard and seen on your commercials, you do voiceovers too.
I do, yeah.
And really good job on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Alex, let's talk about just the number of stories and the types of people, men and women, because you're able to interview both, aren't you, and record stories.
Yeah, it's like I've been there long enough now, over a decade, that you've kind of first of all you kind of recognize there are patterns in everybody's stories. Not that everybody is the same, but there are definitely patterns that show up. And this is being very general, and so I don't want to say that this is everybody, but a lot of times it's a weed. They start there, or the parents get divorced, or both. For women, again, this is just kind of an overarching archetype, but usually there's some guy who steps in, and there's all of a sudden, and then there's trouble, and so getting comfortable is the wrong word, but getting comfortable with that as I work there, realizing there are those patterns, and then kind of progressing now to where we are, where you kind of have to find those nuances, so to speak, in the stories, has been, for me, I mean, just on a personal level, that's been rewarding to find that part as my job as a producer and as someone who edits audio. But I feel like for the clients themselves, something we talk about at MNTC is that, sharing your story that's part of your recovery, because you're giving back and you're telling people about what you went through. So then hopefully maybe someone can find help and hope. And that's been that for me. That's been helpful. It's been rewarding in a way. To try and connect all this is to say I've grown, so hopefully I'm able to help be more effective in helping the client and sharing their story, so they can help other people. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, are these people graduates of the program that have come back?
All sorts of people. So a lot of times we'll talk to the clients that are right there in the program right now. But, it's amazing. You talk to them even after 9 months. And I don't want to make this all a commercial for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge.
We won't let you.
At 612 Freedom. But but it really is amazing. Even, look, the long-term program is about 13 months, depending. But even at 6, 8, 9 months, people come in and they tell their stories, and you think that, you see it in here in this room, but the people you bring in, you think that didn't happen to you. You didn't outrun the cops. You didn't overdose in a gas station bathroom, and I've heard it all, and I've heard all those stories. So, but like I think I said earlier, you hear the worst of it, but then you see the change that can actually happen, and it strengthens your faith, and it makes you grateful for a place like MNTC.
So how many of these people that maybe they're 9 months sober do their story, and then you find out later that they went back?
I can't quantify that. I can't put an actual number on that. But I think, well, I can tell you this, like statistically, I'll give you a stat that, and this may be a few years old, but I know for us as an organization, as MNTC, they've done studies after people have left the program, and people may have, and I forget what the percentage is, but people may have a lapse, a one-time use, but they've been given the tools to deal with it and to not go into a full-on relapse and go totally backwards. And so that's sort of answering your question. But, so to answer that question another way, a lot of times clients will come in and say, this is my 10th, 13th, 20th recovery center. But then they'll say, and even if and sometimes people have been through our program multiple times, because there are multiple levels to our program, and different things, different stages you can go through. But they'll always say that this place, the moment I walked in, I felt loved, and I feel love, and I think that's what sets us apart.
That's a great thing to hear.
Yeah,
that's your report card. It's good. Do you ever hear stories where you're going, okay, I don't believe this? And how do you verify stuff? Can you?
You can't verify things. I mean, I guess you could look up mugshots and so on and so forth. But so I'll say this. So since I've been there for so long, there's not like a standard addiction story. But when I started, it was what you would expect. And now it's not what you would expect. It's bonkers. It's out of control.
Guys have gotten more needy over the years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so to put things in a different context, when the director of our women's short-term program, I heard from her recently that women come, and this isn't just women, this is everybody, a lot of people in the program, most people, not most people, but this happens all across the program. People will come in and the level of addiction is so bad and the detox is so intense, and I'm not sure what's happening, but whatever happens during that process, they have to bring in like medical grade cleanup crews to take care of whatever happened there. And I don't know all the details and how all that works, but I think that's an encapsulation of just how severe things have gotten and how bad it can be right now. And so, I know this isn't the question you asked, but I think for us as an organization, we've done very well at adapting and still are adapting to those needs, because it's different. It's different than, when we started this show 14 years ago.
Totally. And what I see still in the field, you guys have done an excellent job of pivoting to that with the mental health resources, because when I started counseling 25 years ago, we would get garden variety alcoholics and get that problem. And now the guys that I see going to the Salvation Army and other places, I don't know if they can hear me because of all the mental health stuff that's going on. So it's a comorbidity that we need to treat both at the same time. And we didn't used to do that. And a lot of the new drugs change your brain chemistry, and we know that from imaging. So I'm glad you guys are rolling along with that, because the guys now, and I don't work with women, so they're harder to treat. Everybody still needs Jesus for salvation, but the symptoms of the sinful behavior that I think become a disease have really changed radically. Fair?
Yeah. I mean, and it's just because of the Steve K, who you had on a couple weeks ago, and I think he said this in his story, but, he was a heroin guy, and you can't get heroin. He said you can't get heroin anymore. It's all fentanyl.
Whoa.
And
I did not know that.
Yeah, and that's something I've had him repeat, because I wasn't sure I heard him right when he told me that. He said, "Yeah, no, everything. Fentanyl's kind of in everything." And so, and if you're not familiar with fentanyl, just know that a very small dose is very, very lethal, and it's everywhere. And so, so that's what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Alex, I'm curious about how important it is to own your story before you can share it. I want to go to the authenticity of the stories you hear, because we can generate a story, but not until you own it can you actually share it and have some kind of impact in other people's lives. I mean, Scripture says that we connect at our level of brokenness, and when you share authenticity, I think is when you really get the ability to connect to others and to make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, I think so. I think that for the clients, and I've not been an actual client, so I don't want to necessarily speak for them, but I think that having done this for long enough, it's that thing of, secrets keep you sick. And so them having the power to actually share what happened to them, it's healing. And then, and then actually share it. So this happened probably, I don't know. I think this was in like 03 or 04. So this is a long time ago. But a client went to a church and shared his story. And his story involved knocking over robbing a Walgreens with his cousin, gunpoint, $1,000, got caught, went to jail, so on and so forth. The guy who owned the Walgreens was in the church service that day and walked up to him and said, "I own that Walgreens that you guys robbed." And the guy said, my wife and I actually prayed for you and your cousin that night that you would get the help that you need, and now here you are. And so that's not everybody, obviously, but that's kind of an extreme example of how, when the clients share their story, some amazing things can happen and will happen. And to close that story, he's now a pastor in Maplewood.
The thing that I think you get, and you were here for a few years, we can't see God, but we can sure see what he does. And you've been doing it long enough, and you've probably heard all the stories, but is the awe still there for you of the miracle of what Jesus does?
I think we're going to take a little break, and that's what we call in radio, George, a cliffhanger. We'll come back and hear Alex's story. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. George, we are having a great time with our friend Alex tonight.
So good to see him.
First time producer way back when we started Road Recovery. Remember that?
Kind of. I couldn't
Richard
remember.
Nixon was president.
Full disclosure, on the break we ended with, we'll answer that question. None of us could remember what it was, so we replayed it, and I asked it. I think the big thing before we get to that, and it was about, are you still in awe of what Jesus does with people, is that Alex left here to go into service for people that are in addiction and their lives are all broken. And he stayed with that. And that's another thing here, because we always said when you were here, and we still say it, that Jesus doesn't get us saved and cleaned up without having a job for us to do. And we're real proud of you that you've done that and stuck with it. And I'm sure there's other places you could make a lot more money, but you're serving God, and we're real proud of that. So are you still in awe when you see this, or have you gotten used to people getting sober and it's just, it happens?
And saved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a term, and I'm sure it's sort of specific to what we do at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, but it's called compassion fatigue, and it's just, you do hear so many stories, and so so the recovery coaches who work in our organization, they're the ones who are with the clients day in, day out, and they burn out, and they can burn out very easily, and it's not a surprise why. Like I wouldn't last an 8-hour shift doing what they do. I would either walk out or blow up on somebody. So there's a very real. There's the very real specter of that there could be compassion fatigue. But for me, I would say that yes, that has come in a certain way, but also there's this thing that has happened, I feel, especially over the last couple of years, where it's really taken hold, where you're in awe because you see people differently, if that makes sense. When you see somebody who's on the street who's asking for money, or like this morning, I was in downtown Minneapolis and I saw someone nodded out on the side of the street, and instead of thinking, "Come on, man," you're like, "Oh, I hope that person can get into the program."
Nice.
And that's not. I don't think that all the time, so I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think that is so. While it may not be a daily whoa kind of thing that happens, there is a thing inside of you, and I would say this for probably a lot of people like me that work in this part of MNTC, where it's not necessarily directly with the clients every day, but we do get to hear the stories, and we do get to interact a little bit with the clients, where you start to develop a different outlook on people and addiction, and that that people just need help.
So it sounds, rather than getting hardened, your heart is softened and there's more empathy there. And by the way, MNTC is Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. For those people who are listening coast to coast now, which is our show is, and it wasn't when you started, it's great to hear that. The compassion fatigue is very real. And usually where it comes from for counselors is a lot of those people are in recovery. I know I am. And what happens, and can happen, is you figure that your work is doing your work. And you don't take care of yourself and work on your own recovery, because that's what you're doing all day, and you kind of get sick of it. And where you can tell is you're angry at your clients, you don't believe them, blah, blah, blah. It's like that. It happens to police, too. And what you have to do is work your own program and really rely on God, because otherwise your humanness takes over and you go back to the old person you were, and a lot of people wind up using again. There's a really high recidivism rate with drug counselors.
Alex, when George and I have been doing this over the years, one thing we find, and you'll probably agree to this, is that the overabundance of stories, the majority of them, there is an initial entry into chemical use at such an early age, where let's say I had my first sip of a beer in the backyard when I was 8, or you hear at 11 I was drinking or trying marijuana, and it's shocking that there is such an early entrance into drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, and this is not a surprise to you, and anybody who's listened to this show once or twice has heard this story. But it's that acceptance piece. It's people young aren't getting what they need at home, and so they go and they try and find it somewhere else. And even at a young age, they do that, and it leads to some terrible things. So back to the story about the guy earlier from who robbed the Walgreens and then met the guy. So he grew up in a community where his dad was not really that didn't show much emotion, and so he went looking for belonging somewhere else, and it just so happened that there were a lot of gangs in his neighborhood. And so he fell in with the gangs, and by 12 years old, he was stealing cars. 12 years old, so and doing drugs and things. But yeah, so we see that all the time, and but usually, I mean, not always, but that's usually what's at the heart of it, is that people aren't getting what they need at home, or not even just at home, but from some sort of stable source, and so they go looking for it somewhere else, and it's always in the wrong place.
Well said. You work with a lot of gang people?
I've met some. I don't know if I'd say a lot.
One of the problems there clinically working with people like that is they can quit using, but they're addicted to the lifestyle too, and they miss that. And I've had a lot of guys go back, Bill, that could stay off drugs and that, but they miss the lifestyle, the power, the action.
Being large and in charge.
And being part of a club,
Yep.
and they go back, and it's really powerful, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the guys who do get it become part of the club with Christ. Because what you said is right. If we're not getting something, we're going to go somewhere to find it. And if we don't have belonging, we're going to find it. And usually we find the low-hanging fruit, and that's the druggy guys. I know it happened to me. And that never works out real well. But the great thing is God allows us to go our own way so he can bring us back. But most people don't make that. And I'm glad that at Teen Challenge that you're focused on salvation as well as sobriety.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's obviously the big piece to who we are and what we do. And there's so many different components to who we are now as an organization. You know, there's mental health, and there's, you know, we're in the Twin Cities right now in the studio, but, so there are our centers in Minneapolis, but we're all throughout the state, and at the and as we get bigger and as we grow and as things change, that's really been the foundation. And I know you've had Rich Sherber on this show before, and he really laid that foundation. And as we move forward, Tom Trzynski's our CEO now, and Tom makes it very clear that Jesus is the first part of our program, our organization as a whole, and then everything else flows out of that.
Isn't Teen Challenge nationwide, kind of worldwide?
It is. So the way we Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge has approached things has always been, we've always been on the forefront. And I know that sounds a little cocky to say, but it's true. And back to Rich Sherber, that's because of Rich Sherber. He has had the foresight, and also he had the foresight, and also he was in tune with God enough to know that this is what we should do, that this is how we should move forward. And so that's a strange way of saying yes. It is nationwide, but I feel like we are a little bit we're leading the way. I feel like.
Well, and that's great, because competitively, the secular treatment centers, as people call them, the number one is Hazelden, and that's located in Minnesota. And as far as that industry, all roads eventually started in recovery basically with Hazelden. So we're very fortunate here in Minnesota. And for me, what convicted me and why I went to the Salvation Army is working in a secular treatment center. I really couldn't tell people the truth about what's going to happen when you die, and by no other name are you saved. And you guys lead with that, and I think it's important clinically for a couple reasons, Bill. A lot of people might get sober, and we say that sobriety is chemical abstinence with a change in our lifestyle, but it's never going to be good enough unless you have Christ, because you were created by him to serve him. And a lot of people that are sober go back. Most people that I see don't make it. I would say it's less than 10% nationwide. You can lose your sobriety, I believe, but you can't lose your salvation. We could probably argue about that. I can see Alex sitting over here, but
I'll pass on that.
yeah.
No, but I love that his organization leads with Christ and starts with Jesus, and not only opens up the doors with love to everyone who walks in, but also helps to kind of retrain and reprioritize where a person's going to understand how much they're going to learn to love worship and praise and singing and Bible study and Bible verse memorization and getting an understanding of God's Word. That's what transforms lives.
Yeah, kind of adjacent to that, or kind of piggybacking off of that, there's a story that we heard recently. So there's a girl. She actually works now at the Women's Center here in Minneapolis at one of the women's centers. But it's an amazing thing the way that the faith aspect of who we are works out, because she was addicted to heroin and meth, and a couple brought her in, and just to try and get her to introduce her to the organization. And she walked in, and she introduced herself to some of the women, and the women all go, "Oh, they said her name, and we've been praying for you." And she said, "For me?" I said, "Yeah, so someone told us about you, and we've all been praying for you." And it was one of those things that she knew right then, like, okay, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so I feel like that's just one of the many things that makes us unique and special. But more than that, the power of faith in God and Jesus, that is what really drives us, and that's what really compels people to change.
All right, we're going to take a short break and be right back. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. We have Alex in studio with us. Alex started with us 14 years ago, Real Recovery, our very first producer. He's gone on to continue work in the drug and alcohol addiction community.
He's gone on to a lot better things.
Well, yeah, let's be honest.
I didn't say that.
Well, it was implied.
No, but it was implied.
Well, yeah, okay.
And when you show up with two bodyguards in a limousine, we get that.
Yeah, they have those little earpieces in. Did you see those guys out there?
Yeah, they didn't like that.
They're tough looking.
No.
Yeah. But you have been at the forefront of hearing stories of recovery and stories of transformation of people who have left their addictions and have transformed their lives through Jesus Christ. And that's why we do Real Recovery. So we always appreciate hearing stories, and I know you've heard a whole bunch of them. And there's a consistent theme that always seems to run through. People want to be loved. They want to be accepted. They want to belong to something. And for some, they want to change the way they feel. They numb themselves because of some trauma in their life, some abuse, something horrible that they didn't invite into their life, nor did they ask for. And all of a sudden, they're stuck with these feelings, and they don't know how to deal with them. Families move, they relocate. People have no friends. They feel isolated. They feel alone. They feel angry. Parents divorce. Bad things happen. And if you don't have Christ in your life, it's nearly impossible to have any level of resilience where you can be an overcomer. And if you do come to faith in Christ, yes, you can become an overcomer. You can deal with all conditions and situations. And if you are in the midst of an addiction right now, or if it's knocking at your door and you don't know how you're going to deal with it, if you needed a treatment facility, Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge would be a great place to consider. And if you are just in a cycle of pain and you are finding yourself time and time again resorting back to your addiction, Christ can set you free. And you just take your pain and suffering to Him and say, this is bigger than me, and I need you to help me. And I think the Lord will lead you into community. Maybe it's with a recovery group, or maybe it's a new church family, but don't try to go this alone. Alex, wouldn't you say that's one of the biggest problems is people try to do it alone?
Yeah, and I think that especially, 2020 to 2022, we had a lot of folks come in who were alone for, obviously there was the pandemic and all sorts of different things going on, but a lot of people were alone. And so they would, the stories that I have heard from lots of people from that time going in alone were that they would shut themselves in their house, and they would, because you can get alcohol delivered now, just have the alcohol delivered, and they wouldn't even have to leave the house. And so that's my way of saying yes, absolutely. It's when people isolate a lot of times, and so when we talk to clients, a lot of the times, one of the questions we will always ask them is, what were your relationships like? Or what was something that your mom or dad or kid or whoever, what's something that they said to you that really stuck with you during your addiction? And, half the time people say, well, I didn't have any relationships, so no one said anything to me. I couldn't talk. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just doing this. And so, so yes, the answer is yes.
And sometimes, Alex, it's hard for them to be honest because you're asking a fish about water, and the fish says, what's water? If you ask them to talk about something that traumatized them when they were younger, they're so traumatized by it, they don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the woman who, came in and people have been praying for her. Part of her story is that, when she did come in, when those people brought her to the MNTC, to the Women's Center, her thought was, I don't have a problem. I'm glad all these people are getting help.
Wow.
I'm okay. And she was not. But she got help. She works there now.
It's really interesting. I worked with a lady one time, and her therapist, and one of her great questions that would break down the hardest guy was she would say, gosh, you look like a winning guy, looking good, dressing well. Why don't you like yourself? And that would just buckle people and crumble them. Wow. And I've never met an addict, and I'm a recovering one, who at the time liked themselves. And that makes you even lonelier because it reinforces why you are alone. And we all make a real big effort to try to fit in, and we'll do anything to do it. And that question, I think, is such a good one. And then leading with the creator of the universe gave his life because he loves you is just a super place to start.
George, if you don't like yourself, and Alex, don't you have to present an imposter to the world? Because if I don't like who I am, I got to show the world.
Well, I could see why you wouldn't.
Well, I get that. I get that. But we're not talking about me right now.
We should.
No, but we're not going to.
Are we going to talk about me?
No.
Oh, darn.
No,
okay.
But if you don't like yourself, you do have to present somebody to the world. And
totally,
that's probably going to be an
100%.
imposter.
So then, even if people do like you, they like the person you're
that you're presenting.
And it's a trap. And I think for a lot of people in recovery, I know this happened to me. When I got into an accountability group, these people were just like I was. The things we were reading, they thought like I did. And these people liked me when I didn't like myself. And that's a community that can really foster growth. It has great acceptance, really unconditional love. And I think a lot of the accountability recovery groups mimic the first century church. And one of the things you guys do really well is love people up right away until they can love themselves.
Yeah, so recently we talked to a client, and she came in and, just totally broken. And she came in and she was really kind of scared to come into our program specifically because she was living, she was gay. And so she came in and she was very concerned that we would be very judgmental because she's gay, and that, that it wasn't going to work out. But she said, literally, I walked in and this was the most loving place I had ever been. And I know I said that already about us, and I'm not trying to but that's who we are. It's the love. It's different. It's so many people when they come in, it's something that we've been talking about recently on my team there at MNTC, is just that, that's the thing we hear most from clients is, came in and I felt love. I felt love, but I also didn't feel judged. And it's like what you said, there are people like you there, so they know what's up. They know what you're doing, what you've done, and they don't care. They just want to help you. And so I think that's what's so cool about what we do. It's easy to say, I'm not going to judge somebody, but when, someone tells you all the crazy things that they've done or whatever, how are you actually going to react? And I feel like within our organization, at MNTC, people get real love without judgment.
What happens then, we're like survivors of the Titanic, and we're in this together, and what follows up is gratitude. Really hard to go back to using when you look at all the things God has done in your life. The people who go back are people that aren't working with other people and aren't grateful for what God has done. And that's a good recipe for me. I know in my real hard times, my mentor, Danny, will always say, "You're still alive. Are you grateful about that? You have a relationship with God. Are you grateful about that?" And he never asks if I'm grateful for him in my life because he knows how I'd answer it, but afterwards I am. And when you think about all those things, which you don't have when you're using, it's a pretty powerful thing. And plus, they like being around those people. If I like somebody, they're either in recovery or they probably should be. And we find each other.
So I'm walking away tonight thinking that if we don't love people, and it's sometimes difficult with people you really care about, when you watch them destroy their lives or they're in the process of it, you just have to love them so much. You can hate the behavior in them, but you need to just love them.
Yeah, and it's really hard. The Bible says we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, and if you don't love yourself, it's really hard to love other people.
Yeah, well,
that one's never been a problem for me. But
yeah, well, no, I'm always encouraged when I hear stories of transformation. I know that's really one of the reasons we love doing this show, and love hearing other stories of people who have completely had their lives changed by the power of the gospel. And God will meet you in your time of need, crisis. It doesn't really matter where you're at or how much you're feeling like you can't redeem or change your life. You can, and He will. So you need to let Him. And I know, George, we're going to be praying for everyone tonight who's tuned into the show, who says, I've got a story, but I just want to encourage you to own the story and to make it yours and have it be authentic. And then figure out how to share your story so you can be a hope and an encouragement to others. I think it's a significant piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's God's story in you. And if you're listening and you're not a Christian, but you are in recovery, look at the big blue book where it says that God is doing for you what you couldn't do for yourselves. And really, if you're thinking about God, He's drawing you, because nobody gets sober unless Jesus does this. It's just not everyone gives Him credit. And until you are with Jesus, you're going to leave a lot of recovery on the table, and you won't have that pure happiness and joy that passes all understanding.
Mm-hmm. And Alex, thank you for being here night one when that egg was cracked, and here we are. Yeah. It's still pretty messy, but that's the story of recovery.
Good to have you. You're great.
Yeah. Thanks for fighting it out with us those first several years when we were trying to figure out what we were doing.
Well, we still are.
Well,
we're trying to figure out why we're still on the air.
Try to give us a little credit, all right? Just
it's all God.
I'm aware of that. Yeah. See, we're still arguing at the same level from day one. Nothing's changed, Alex.
Like
you can see that.
Left.
That's like you never left. Well, that's all the time we have for this show. Alex, thanks so much for being here. Much love to you and your family. And thanks for listening and tuning in tonight. If you missed any of the show, you can always go to myfaithradio.com and the Road Recovery page. And thank you for listening. Have a great night, and God bless. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
What if the comforts you've always relied on were suddenly gone? Would your faith hold?
I wish I had the kind of story where I live a good, full, happy life, but I wouldn't know him like I know him if he hadn't taken away the comforts.
When Rebecca Albaugh's world fell apart, Jesus met her in the grief. Hear Rebecca's story on this week's episode of The Unfolding on Apple and Spotify and at myfaithpodcasts.com.